Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to Trollheim with your host, Rabbi Anibal. Happy to be again here with all of you studying a little bit of Torah. Yeah. Uh, Brenda, you like Dor Hadash? They're amazing, those kids. That's why Thursday is my favorite day. I have Dor Hadash, then I have a little break, and then I'm going to... Sorry, I have Trollheim with all of you guys. Then I have a little break, and then I'm going to the rehearsal of Dor Hadash. It's every Thursday after school. So it's a very intense Thursdays that I have. It's a great experience, and we were able to put a big group for Yom Ha'atzmaut. You probably saw the video, guys. You probably saw the videos. If you haven't seen the videos, let me know. It's on YouTube. I can probably share a link after this with you. Welcome, Holly. Welcome to the class. So let's see again who's here again. We have Lori, we have Janet, David, Brenda, East of Desire. Is it Elkanah? That's what it is, Brenda? Please confirm with me in the chat. Brenda is here. Shelly Chochinov, Holly Mandelkern. Yeah, I am the biggest kid on stage. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. And it was quite a challenge. You guys don't understand. This was probably our biggest night of the year for Dor Hadash. And it's on a big stage at the Ready JCC, and we brought our own sound system, which is pretty fancy. All the kids were wearing, in-ear monitors. They have something like this. I'll show you. All of them. We got a grant. We got a donation to get all this for all the kids. The things. Let's see if the camera can catch it. Let's give it a second to adjust the focus. This thing. You see that they go around the ear. So each one of them was wearing that. And it's pretty fancy. It's something that you will see at rock concerts and things, but to be able to get that for each one of the kids at the choir, and each one of them has their own microphone. So then you have to mix it and blend it. And we brought Colin. You know, for all of you who attend our online services, you know who Colin is. He's Marvin's assistant, and he's great with sound, and he understands a lot of these new technologies. So we had a good team going there. And it was a great performance, about 15 minutes. That's all the time we had. Otherwise, we would have prepared more songs, but they gave us 15 minutes only. And hopefully they will have it next year. So just for all of you to get prepared, we are going to try to put together a concert of Dor Hadash for Hanukkah. And you say, wow, we have to wait until... Well, you have to understand that all this group of Dor Hadash, they're mostly new kids. So they still have to build up repertoire. And we already started to prepare for Hanukkah. So we are hoping to put something big for all of you for Hanukkah. Yeah. So welcome Elkanah from Nigeria. Wow. Nigeria, welcome. But I'm glad, guys, that you enjoy the video. It's the choreographies, and I wish the kids will dance a little bit more. That is tougher than the singing. The singing, pretty much they can all sing, but the dancing, oh boy, that is a challenge. I don't know how to make them move more. Maybe I will one day. Maybe one day I will learn how to do that, right? So, okay. So we are about to begin with the class. Let me do a couple of things here. Okay. Today we are going to study mostly the Parsha of the week. And I said mostly because we just celebrated Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer. As you probably remember the class when we study about Pesach, I taught a little bit about the counting of the Omer and how the counting of the Omer is so important for the Jewish people, because we use that as an opportunity to be aware of our character flaws, right? Of what we still need to improve about our character. And so we take the counting of the Omer as an opportunity to work on that. But within the counting of the Omer, the 33rd day, remember the counting of the Omer is 49 evenings that we count, but the 33rd day is special. We call it Lag BaOmer because in Hebrew, remember, all the letters of the Hebrew alphabet have a number attached to them. So the first letter of the Hebrew alphabet is Aleph. So Aleph is 1. The second letter is Bet. So Bet is 2. The third letter is Gimel. Gimel is 3. So when we said Lag, so it's Lamed Gimel. We already know that Gimel is 3. Then you can calculate that Lamed is 30. So Lag BaOmer is the 33rd day of the counting of the Omer, and it's very special, and I'm about to tell you why it's so special. So, Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer count, this year was on Tuesday, May 5th, okay, a couple of days ago, and it's a festive day of the Jewish calendar. It is celebrated with day trips on which children traditionally play with bow and arrows. And there are some theories that the whole idea of the bow and arrows is that back in the day used to be like a game kind of excuse for people to get together and study Torah at times where studying Torah was forbidden. So it may come from here, from there. So we don't know, but there is a tradition of playing with bow and arrows. Then bonfires. This is huge in Israel. This is huge in Israel for Lag BaOmer, people lighting bonfires, especially in Meron. We're going to read this in a minute. So bonfires, parades, and other joyous events. Many visit the grave of the great sage and mystic Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, also known as Rabbi Shimon. Rabbi Shimon. It's like if somebody ever mentioned Rabbi Shimon, they're always talking about Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is located in Meron. Meron is basically a mount in northern Israel. And they visit Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai because his yahrzeit, his anniversary of his passing, was on Lag BaOmer. So he died on a Lag BaOmer. Okay, so that's why people go to his tomb to dance and to light a bonfire. So why would it go? Why would they do that? Right? That is not the way we observe yahrzeits. When we observe yahrzeit to our relatives, what we do is maybe we light a candle, a yahrzeit candle at home, and we have a little prayer. But I wouldn't call it that it's a joyous event. Well, with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was different. And I will explain in a minute why we dance, or why some people dance at the yahrzeit, during the yahrzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, right? But before that, let's try to fully understand Lag BaOmer. So Lag BaOmer is always on the 18th day of the Hebrew month of Iyar. Okay, just remember that. Always the 18th of Iyar. So what's up with the name? The word Lag is made of the Hebrew letters Lamed and Gimel, which together have the numerical value of 33. BaOmer means of the Omer. And the Omer, those of you who are my regular students, you probably remember, the Omer is the counting period that begins on the second day of Passover and culminates with the holiday of Shavuot following day 49 of the counting. Okay? And again, Lag BaOmer, 33 of the Omer, and it's always 18th of ER. Okay? If you have any questions, please let me know. Let me know in the chat. So let's go back to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai now, because this is the most interesting thing. Why will people dance for the yahrzeit? Okay? So listen to this. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who lived in the 2nd century of the Common Era, was the first to publicly teach the mystical dimension of the Torah known as the Kabbalah, and is supposedly the author of the classic text of Kabbalah, the Zohar. Okay, supposedly I'm going to explain a little bit more about that in a minute. On the day of his passing, Rabbi Shimon instructed his disciples to mark the date as the day of my joy. Because Rabbi Shimon knew that the day that he was going to die, he's going to go to heaven, he's going to be with God, and it's going to be a moment of intense bliss and joy. So he was saying, I want you to feel the same thing here on earth. So he left instruction for people to make his yahrzeit a festive occasion. Okay, that's why we have all this celebration. So what's so special about the day of the passing? Well, let me continue here. The final day of a righteous person's earthly life marks the point at which all their deeds, teachings, and work achieve their culminating perfection and the zenith of their impact upon our lives. So, each Lag BaOmer, we celebrate Rabbi Shimon's life and the revelation of the esoteric soul of Torah. Okay, so that's basically what happened and why the big deal with Lag BaOmer and all the dancing and everything. Now that I explained that, let me tell you a little bit more about all this celebration at Meron, because it's not just about celebrating the yahrzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The other tradition that developed for that day is for kids, especially in Israel, males, for boys, that they are age 3. So the first Lag BaOmer after the 3rd birthday, the parents will take the boys to Meron on Lag BaOmer to get the first haircut. Have you ever heard the tradition of the upsharing? Or upsharing, I don't know how to pronounce it, it's a Yiddish word. And it's in Hebrew they call it halakah, with the cut. And it's the first haircut for the boys. There is a tradition that we don't cut the hair of the boys until their 3rd birthday. So if you're not going to go to Meron, you can celebrate the 3rd birthday with the haircut. Okay, but if you're going to have an opportunity, upsharing, yeah. So if you're going to have the opportunity to go to Meron for Lag BaOmer, so you wait until the 3rd birthday and then you take your boy to Meron to get the 1st birthday there. So the idea of not cutting the hair for 3 years is similar to, when you plant a tree that you are not allowed to touch the fruits for 30 years. Only in the 3rd year you can do it, but then you have to bring it to the temple. And so that's how the tradition began. And also it's coming from the tradition. Remember, we're talking about, very traditional Jews that do this, that in traditional Judaism, women will have long hair and boys will have short hair. Now, up to age 3, there is nothing specifically planned for boys that it will be different for girls. When I'm talking about Torah study. At the age of 3 is when the boys study their Torah study and they've been introduced to the Mishnah and stuff like that. So for that age is when they cut their hair so they look like boys now. It's at age 3. And this is part of the Mishnah that there are a list of what to expect at every age. So that's what happened at age 3, and that's why they get a haircut on that day. Okay, now, and it's beautiful. The only problem with Lag BaOmer in Meron in Israel is that there is a history of tragedy for that, because there is such a massive amount of people coming that all the infrastructure, it proved once and again being not enough. So you can go and Google it and you will see all the tragedies and, like bleachers that they will collapse and stampedes because of the massive amount of people, and people died, and it's very sad for something that is so beautiful. Now, it used to be also a big controversy during the COVID pandemic, when people were trying to avoid large crowds. There was a big group that didn't care, and they showed up also for Lag BaOmer at Meron, and it was another disaster because it became like a mega spread event, and lots of people got sick and died after that. So, and I know that it's supposed to be a happy day in the middle of the counting of the Omer, but unfortunately, that specific event in Meron has a history of somehow tragic episodes attached to it, which is very sad because it's a beautiful concept, right? Now, before we move on to why the counting of the Omer is a sad event, let me say it again. Counting of the Omer is a sad event. Lag BaOmer is supposed to be the exception, supposed to be the joyous moment within the tragedy. And in many communities, it's the time that, after Lag BaOmer, that's it. You don't go back to the sadness of the counting of the Omer. It's like the one that interrupts that. Yeah. Brenda, you said, I remember the tragedy. No, but it's not the first one. If you Google it, you will see that there are many others because of the amount of people that they come there to Mount Meron. So, Lag BaOmer is a semi-mourning period, and Lag BaOmer stops that because of the joy of the events that happened there. One is the yahrzeit of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and I mentioned before, who supposedly wrote the Zohar. It's not clear that it was him. The Zohar itself surfaced as a compilation of writings through the hands and the pen of Moses de Leon. Moses de Leon, Spanish individual, and that he was a rabbi in the 1200s, early 1200s, early 1300. I think he died on 1305. Yeah, 1305. He died. So he kind of published it, but because Rabbi Moses de Leon was a Mr. Nobody, nobody was going to care about the Zohar. So the theory is that he said that these were the writings of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who he happened to found. So Moses de Leon said, I didn't write it. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did. So there is this controversy, actually, within Judaism on who is the real author of the Zohar. The official story is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. The more critical approach is that it was actually Moses de Leon, which it doesn't make it any less important. In fact, what it does is, it elevates the character of Moses de Leon to the level of somebody like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was a well-known mystic, right? So you can do your research there, and you can take your bet. What's your favorite theory? Are you in the camp of the people who said that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the author of the Zohar, or are you with the one that said that Moses de Leon was the one who wrote the Zohar? I leave that to you. So let's go back to Lag BaOmer, and let's try to understand now why is a sad period, with the exception of Lag BaOmer. Okay? So, Lag BaOmer also commemorates another joyous event. Listen to this. The Talmud now relates that in the weeks between the Jewish holiday of Passover and Shavuot, a plague raged among the disciples of the great sage Rabbi Akiva, which, by the way, was one of the teachers and mentors of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So there you have another big connection with the time of the Omer. So, why was the plague sent to kill the disciples of Rabbi Akiva? According to the Talmud, because they did not act respectfully towards each other. Okay? And I mentioned before that the time of the Omer is a time of reflecting on our flaws and to improve our flaws, right? And now you have all these students of Rabbi Akiva, who was the greatest sages of the time, so who's supposed to be a role model on how to treat each other who were disrespectful and arrogant. So, according to the Talmud, God punished them with a big plague who decimated who killed all the students of Rabbi Akiva. Okay? It was a very sad occasion. Now, because all that plague and all those deaths happened during the counting of the Omer, these weeks are therefore observed as a period of semi-mourning, with various joyous activities restricted by law and or custom. One of the things that some people won't shave, and some people won't listen to live music or to instruments. There is I have my favorite online Jewish radio. It's called JewishMusicStream.com. JewishMusicStream.com. You can go there. It's beautiful. So they play non-stop Jewish music, especially new Jewish music. Sometimes I get inspiration there for some of the songs that we bring to our services. And so if you go now, all you're going to hear is a cappella music, because the owner of the radio is a religious person who believes that live, like a music with instrumentation, should not be played during the counting of the Omer. Well, you wouldn't hear it now because it's already after Lag BaOmer, so the instruments came back. But from as soon as Pesach is over, because during Chol HaMoed Pesach, even though it's counting of the Omer, but it's still Passover, right? So they still play instrument, but then as soon as Pesach is over, until Lag BaOmer, only a cappella music, which is beautiful, but it's different. Something is lacking. Yeah. So on Lag BaOmer, let's continue with our text. On Lag BaOmer, the death ceased. Thus, Lag BaOmer also carries the theme of loving and respecting one's fellow. So, the idea here is that if the punishment for the student was that they didn't treat each other with respect, and on Lag BaOmer the death stop, the idea is that in Lag BaOmer we are celebrating that at least them understood and applied the concept of love your neighbor as yourself and treating people respectfully. So Lag BaOmer is a day that we celebrate the joy of being able to coexist with other people in a nice manner, without judgment, without aggressions and everything like that. That's why Lag BaOmer is so important. And even though, and I don't know in your city, because I know many of you are connecting from the United States, we even have one from Nigeria, right? So I don't know if you ever heard any observance of Lag BaOmer at your place. If you have, please let me know in the chat. I can tell you that in South America, it is very common to do bonfires and things, because I lived in Argentina, in Buenos Aires, I live in Chile, and the season of the year doesn't really matter there. Weather is pretty much nice all year round to do outdoors activities, so that's what we do. Here in Winnipeg is a hit and miss, and I've seen that Chabad take it very seriously, and every year they organize bonfires, barbecues and things, but sometimes the weather is really lousy, like this year. It was very cold. We even had a little bit of snow. So it's tough to celebrate Lag BaOmer. Okay? So if you have any questions here, please let me know in the chat. I just see that Randy is with us as well. Welcome, Randy, to the class. Okay? So, now that we studied Lag BaOmer, even though it was a little bit late, Elkanah, you said, we don't have Lag BaOmer celebration, we just not get haircuts till the Lag BaOmer. Okay. Yeah, that's one of the traditions. Beautiful. Now, let's go to the Parsha for today. We have two Parshiot together, Behar and Bechukotai, and with these two Parshiot, we are wrapping up the book of Leviticus. Okay? Next week, we are going to start with the book of Numbers. Now, these two Parshiot talk about many different things, and I wanted to start with the second parsha, the Bechukotai, because usually when we have two parshiot back to back, I always neglect the second one because there is not enough time to cover everything. So just in case we run out of time, I wanted to start with the other way around. I wanted to start with the second parsha first, and then if there is time, I will bring a little bit of the first parsha, which is Behar, okay? Which, among other things, I will talk about the sabbatical year, not wronging one another. You'll see. So it's a great topics that we have in this parsha. But I wanted to teach about this because this is something very important that affects the way we study Torah and the way we approach Scripture. The need for interpretation of the Scripture is kind of encapsulated in the first verse of the second parsha, Bechukotai. And it says like this. I will read now. It says, "Im bechukotai teilechu," if you follow my laws. Law. It says laws there, but we are going to see in a minute that it could mean different things. "Im bechukotai teilechu, ve'et mitzvotai tishmoru," and if you observe my commandments, right? "Ve'asitem otam," and you will observe them. That is the opening of the parsha. So here we are introduced to something very interesting. That is, it's kind of mentioning two different things. Laws and commandments. Why the need for two different words? Why the need for the Torah to say, follow my laws and my commandments? Aren't those exactly the same? Well, yes, it is. But hukotai, or in the plural, hukotai means my laws. Sometimes it's translated as statutes. Okay? So hukot is the plural, or chok is the singular for that word. And it's a very, very interesting thing because it represents all the laws of the mitzvot, or the commandments, that seems to have no logic. And there are many of those in Judaism. I don't know if you're aware of that. You probably are. It's usually the ones that people don't observe. When people say, I relate to the ethical teachings of Judaism, but not so much to the ritual things. Well, what they are telling you is, I don't care much about the hukim. Okay? And that's why this parsha is talking about both. It's talking about the hukim, right? And the rest of the commandments. In other words, the one that they are illogical and the one that they are logical. So what it says is, if you think that everything is coming from God, well, if there are certain commandments that you understand, well, good for you. But it doesn't mean that you have to neglect all the others that for any reason you cannot comprehend or understand. Okay? So that's the thing. So, with that introduction, let's go into trying to understand the categories of the commandments. Okay? Even though the parsha is talking about hukim and mitzvot, the rabbis call it, now we are going into rabbinic language, because at the end of the day, we are rabbinic Judaism, rabbinic Jews. The rabbis call it hukim and mishpatim. And I can't even stress how important this is for us to understand these two categories. Okay? Let me read these two and then I will add a little bit more about commandments. Hukim are those laws in the Torah we seemingly do not know the reason for, such as the prohibition to wear shatnez. Shatnez is forbidden mixture. For example, you cannot combine wool and linen into the same garment. It's forbidden. It's a violation of a commandment from the Torah. Or also the prohibition to eat pork. Yeah, some people try to explain it, that pork is a dirty animal. Well, so are chickens. Chicken is dirty. Have you ever been to So don't tell me that pork is bad because it's dirty. Because it's not. Well, they used to carry lots of illnesses. So do many other animals that they are kosher, right? You also have, well, we can eat cow. Well, have you ever heard about the mad cow disease? Right? All animals carry disease. But the Torah says that we cannot eat pork. And we don't have to think about it into medical terms. It's good for your body. It's bad for your body. We don't know why. We really don't know why God said cow is kosher, pork is not. Because pork is consumed in many cultures, and they do great. They do great. Asian cultures, they eat a lot of pork. They live until 100 years old with no issues. So it's not a problem. But I just wanted to mention that there are many commandments in the Torah that they make no sense, or they have no rational explanation, and those are the hukim. And that's what I said, that those are the ones that most people won't do, because they don't understand it. Many Jews will eat pork because they don't understand what is wrong with it. And they don't understand what's wrong with it, because there is nothing wrong in a physical term, in a material term, with the pork. It's even more, with all these new theories of nutrition and things. Pork is a staple because of all the fat content and everything. So, but the Torah said no. And we have to deal with the fact that we don't understand, and we may never understand it, because it's a spiritual prohibition, not a physical one. The same thing with circumcision. The debate, is it good for you, is it bad for you, that people miss the point. Circumcision is not about a physical something, it's a spiritual connection with God. How? We don't know how. I don't know what it implies. So, because those are hukim, those are the things that we try to, usually when you start getting all these debates about what's the reason, and people don't agree why the reason, that is a hawk. That is a perfect signature. It's perfectly clear that it's a hawk. Okay? So that's the thing. Okay, but then we have also had the mishpatim. And the mishpatim are laws for which we know the reason. They make sense. Examples are the prohibition of stealing or taking bribes. It's also, if I say to you, you should not take bribes, and you will say, okay, that makes sense. I will observe that commandment because it makes sense. Those are mishpatim. So these are laws that are normal, and any decent society will enact those laws, and in fact does enact those laws. Some rabbis try to explain the mishpatim by saying that those are the laws that even without the Torah, societies will figure it out by themselves. But they are part of the Torah as well, because God gave us a whole body of law. Okay? Brenda, you said, what about shellfish? Is that under the hukim category? Yeah. Because the Torah says that shellfish are prohibited. You can try to explain that shellfish is dirty, but there is nothing medically wrong with eating shellfish. Many people do, and they live healthy lives. Physically, they live healthy lives. Okay. Lori said, we used to drink that iced tea because he said not to, then left it out. Did I miss anything, Lori? Iced tea. Okay. What else? Yeah, Shelley. Shellfish don't fit the fish and scale category. So yeah, the Torah doesn't necessarily mention shellfish by name. The Torah says that every creature from the water, it needs to have scales and bones and fins, right? Fins and scales. So because shellfish don't have it, they're not kosher. It's as simple as that. Same with the pork. Even though the Torah does mention it as an example, but the Torah doesn't call out the pork as a specific category. What the Torah says that every mammal should have split hooves, and it should be a ruminant. It should chew its cud. And because the pork has split hoofs but is not a ruminant, then it's not kosher. Okay, that's the thing. That's why. So again, I don't want to go too far from there. For now, just remember we have Hukim and Mishpatim. Those are the two categories: the illogical and logical. Okay, those are the commandments. We also have other commandments that is called Eidot, that they are like the festivals. Festival is something that once I explain to you why we celebrate Passover, if you don't know anything about Passover and I tell you what you do, you won't understand. But as soon as I explain to you that it's an anniversary of something that happened, then you will understand it right away. Okay, it's not immediately logical, but it has an explanation of what we do it because it's to remember something that happened in the past. So those are the categories of the commandment. Okay, now that we understand everything, and so when the Torah says that we have to observe all the hukim and the mitzvot and the mishpatim, okay, we have to understand that this is because everything in the Torah comes from God. And Maimonides, the Rambam, made it clear when he wrote his Principle of Faith. And I will read what he says, what Maimonides says about this. He says, the eighth fundamental principle of Judaism is that the Torah is from heaven. This means that we must believe that this entire Torah, which was given to us from Moses, our teacher, may he rest in peace, is entirely from the mouth of the Almighty. All this is also true for the explanation of the Torah, the oral Torah, which was also received from the mouth of the Almighty. So let me make a pause, a break here. Because what the Maimonides is saying here is that it's good that we understand the Hukim and the Mishpatim, right? All these verses in the Torah that they are telling us to do something. But Maimonides is saying that we know, at least in our form of Judaism, Rabbinic Judaism, we know that there is more than that. Otherwise, on top of everything that is in the Torah, you have the Talmud telling you to do way more things than the 613 commandments of the Torah. And Maimonides is saying that that is also encapsulated in the opening of the Parsha Bechukotai. It's also encapsulated there. When God said, observe my hukim and my mitzvot, is talking about both from the written Torah and the oral Torah. Why? Maimonides make it clear here. Because everything comes from heaven. This is not something that Moses made up or somebody else made up. The traditional way to believe it is that everything came from heaven. And the explanation of the Torah that eventually, centuries after, ended up being part of the Talmud is part of those teachings that God gave to Moses that eventually became what we know as the oral law. Okay? Have that in mind. I will wrap up. I will finish reading this. Let me explain. Maimonides continues. For example, the manner in which we today perform the mitzvot of Sukkah, Lulav, Shofar, Tzitzit, Tefillin, and other items is precisely the way that God, blessed be He, told Moses, who then informed us. And the one whom God appointed as an agent is surely to be relied upon. Okay? So, what Maimonides is saying here is that we have to be aware that the information contained in the Torah is somehow incomplete. Not incomplete, it's not clear. Because yes, the Torah is talking about, for example, that the fact that we have to live in Sukkot for 7 days, for the festival of Sukkot. Or do we need the Lulav? But the Torah doesn't specifically say how or how to build the sukkah What element should be part of the sukkah? So where do we learn that from? Well, that comes through oral law. That was already communicated to Moses. Moses explained that to Joshua and so forth. Continue orally from generation to generation. So until these days, we already know how to build a sukkah. We already know how to shake a lulav. We already know how to build or how to make a talit. And we already know how to wrap up tefillin and other things. And that comes to us through oral law. Okay? Let's continue with this. So the rabbis then tried to explain how to justify the existence of the oral law. And listen to this explanation that Rashi is going to bring. And now he brings it from Leviticus 26:46. And he said, these are the statutes, the ordinances, and the Torahs, plural, in Hebrew is Torot, actually Torot, the Torahs, that the Lord gave between himself and the children of Israel in Mount Sinai through Moses. And Rashi explains, and the Torahs, by saying, why was it needed the plural form Torahs? This denotes because we have two Torahs, one written and one oral. The Torah law, the written one, the one that we read in the synagogue, and the oral law, which became the Talmud. It teaches us that all was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. Now, I have to admit that this interpretation, the interpretation of this verse, it was a little bit of controversial, and it created a division within the rabbis back in the day, when some rabbis did not accept the interpretation that the Torot means multiple Torahs, and they understood that the word Torot there meant instructions, that the word Torot was not used in reference to the physical Torah, but the concept of instructions. But nevertheless, Rashi said that the correct interpretation is Torot means it's talking about the physical Torah, and because it's plural, it means that there are two. And some rabbis will say, and this also connects with the fact that we just celebrated Lag BaOmer, that Torot, because it's plural, right, it could mean more than two, and they said, in fact, it's three, because it also includes the Zohar and the oral, the other part of the oral law, which is the Jewish mysticism, that it was also transmitted in oral form until the Zohar and other books like that, like Sefer Abahir and Yetzirah, were written. That information that eventually was written into those books, before that, was oral. And for some rabbis, that also should be included on what Moses learned from God in Sinai. That Moses learned from God the written Torah, the oral Torah, and the mystical aspects of Torah. And all that was passed orally from one generation to the next. What was the difference? Written Torah was available to everybody. The oral Torah was available to the rabbis. And the mystical Torah was available only to selected people in a one-on-one manner. You couldn't teach back in the day, you couldn't teach Kabbalah in a classroom. Talmud you could, to rabbis, that's why people would go to yeshiva. But Kabbalah was taught only one-on-one. You will need to find a master who will take you as a disciple, and he will teach you the mystical interpretations of Judaism. Why was this one-on-one necessary for that part of the transmission? Because if you ever read the Zohar, it's very difficult to understand, because you can realize right away that the author had all this understanding that because of the nature of the information, it was virtually impossible to communicate that using language. The limitations of language is that for us to comprehend something, you have to build an image of it in your mind. But when you're talking about God, God is infinite. Then you can never make an image of God. In fact, it's one of the 10 commandments that you cannot make an image of God. So how can you understand something that you cannot imagine? Hey guys, listen. The word imagination comes from the word image. You're making an image in your head. That's what you are imagining it. But you're talking about God and the spiritual world and the Olam Haba. And so you can't imagine that. So how can you get it? It's clear that the author of the Zohar understood it. They understood that, and he has this deep insight of God. But it was a kind of comprehension that it does not involve imagination. It is perhaps more connected to a level of the feelings. So in order for the teacher to teach that to somebody else, you have to connect to your student at a level of feelings. You have to be sure that your student is feeling what you're feeling. And that take a one-on-one kind of relationship in order to teach that way. Okay? It's very interesting. But think of it this way. Let's pretend that you have to try to explain to me why do you like strawberry over chocolate? How will you explain that to me using words, and even more so, writing it in the book in a way that you can be sure that I will understand it and I will feel what you feel when you eat strawberry or chocolate? Then you can understand how difficult it is. We are just talking about a couple of flavors. Now multiply that for everything that is related to God. And that's why Kabbalah traditionally was reserved for a one-on-one setting. Talmud was to a larger crowd, but still limited. That is for, rabbinic students. And the written Torah was open to everyone. Okay? So those are the instructions that we learn, and it is encapsulated on the beginning of this week's Parsha Bechukotai. Okay? Now, let's go back to the Rambam. And the Rambam will say the first section of the wisdom of the oral Torah contains the explanation received through Moses that are alluded to in the verses, or can be derived from the written word using the traditional method. What are the traditional method? All you have to do, I don't want to stop on that, go to any Siddur in the early part of Shacharit before the Kaddish Rabbanan. You will have all the methods that they are used for understanding the Torah. It's all there. It's all in the Siddur. You can go read it there. You will need something. You will need a Siddur with explanation, with the footnotes to understand all of them. But they are traditional methods. You cannot. You cannot make up your own methods of studying Torah. You have to follow the traditional ways, and that's what Rambam is saying here. Is saying here. So, it is not possible to challenge or refute these teachings. Once it is established that someone has received such a tradition all the way back to Moses, all ground for debate have been dispelled. So there are many cases of explanations that, for example, the rabbis brought based on connecting two verses. Well, they felt that they could do that because the connection between the verses came through oral law. Okay? So then we cannot come out with a different explanation connecting a different two verses, because that will be our innovation, not the traditional way that supposedly came all the way from Moses. Okay? So that's the thing. And let me give you an example of how this works. This connecting two verses, but the way that we connected, not because we think is appropriate, but because the connection of the two verses came to us through oral law. Let me give you an example. It is. Listen to this. Exodus 13:9 says, "These words must also be a sign for you on your arm and a reminder between your eyes, so that God's Torah may be in your mouth. For with a strong hand God took you out from Egypt." So this is the verse in the Torah that said that we have to put on tefillin in our arms and in our head. Okay? Now the Talmud will try to figure out where in our head we have to put on tefillin. The Torah is very vague. All what it says is between your eyes. But where? How high? What does it mean? Right? And of course, you could come out with your own explanation, but we follow the rabbi's explanations based on the connection of two verses that came to them through oral law. Listen to this. Going to the Talmud, Masechet Menachot, the tractate Menachot. Head tefillin are placed on the high part of the head. How is this derived? So basically, we don't put it between our eyes, we put it here. So technically, it's from the place where the hairline is or was, from there to the back. So the lowest part of tefillin is going to be at the beginning of the hairline, and from there to the back, and not here and not here. It's here. Very important. So, how is this derived? The sages have taught between your eyes. This refers to the high part of the head. You say it refers to the high part of the head, but maybe it really means literally between your eyes. The answer, it says here in Deuteronomy regarding tefillin, between your eyes. And it also says there in Deuteronomy regarding the prohibition of self-mutilation. Do not make a bald patch between your eyes as a sign of mourning. Just as there it is referring to the high part of the head, because it doesn't make any sense to say bald patch here between your eyes. Bald patch is on the head, right? So basically, just as there is referring to a high part of the head where a bald patch can be made, so too here it refers to the high part of the head where a bald patch could be made. Okay? So that's how the rabbis connect two verses, but we have to be very careful because we need to know which verses we are allowed to connect based on oral law. And that is also part of this concept of Torah from heaven that includes the written Torah, the oral Torah, and the mystical Torah. Okay? So, yeah. Okay, everyone. So that's what I knew we wouldn't have time to go to the beginning of the parsha to study about the sabbatical year and all that, but that's fine. That's fine. I think we covered a lot today. We studied about Lag BaOmer, and we studied a little bit about the different kind of mitzvot and the different kind of Torahs. Actually, the written Torah, the oral Torah, and the mystical Torah. We all call it Torah, regardless, because all of the above are Torah for us because we believe that everything is coming from heaven, everything is coming from God, and that's why it became the foundation of Judaism. Okay, so yes. So thank you everyone for coming out. Never enough time, said Shelly. Oh, Shelly, thank you. And if you missed, remember, thumbs up always. And if you haven't done so, please subscribe to our channel. This is very important. So you will be notified every time that we go live and every time we post something new. No, Brenda, I won't do a 2-hour session. Come on. You have to come back next week if you want another hour. But maybe Chazak, we said at the end of Behar-Bechukotai, yes, because we are finishing the book of Leviticus. And don't miss the beginning of the Saturday morning service, because we're going to sing a beautiful version of Chazak that we've been working with Cantor Leslie, and it's going to be Kevin is coming with the saxophone to play it as well. So don't miss it. Saturday morning, we are going to sing Chazak all together. Okay? So, remember, this class is going to be rebroadcasted tonight at 8 p.m. Central Time, just in case you wanna catch it again. And if not, have a wonderful rest of your day. Stay safe, be blessed, and hope to see you all very soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you, Jerome. Thank you, everyone.